Thank you so much once again for tuning into the Zach Moore podcast. I really do appreciate you sitting down and spending a hopefully couple of minutes of your time with me. On today's episode, we got a little bit of a mix of technology, space, and a little bit of football. A little bit of football. Now, first off, in the technology space, since I last recorded, last Wednesday, I recorded. One NFL season passed by us 1 week. Now we're kind of looking into that second week, and we kind of have some injuries that we have to talk about. Many things to talk about on that front. Space wise, interesting stuff going on. Interesting stuff. And as for technology, which is going to be the first thing that I get into, there's multiple things that I am very excited to dive into and particularly to talk about. Since I have last recorded last Wednesday, as I said, on Tuesday of this week, so yesterday for me recording today, there was an Apple release. Apple held this major event where they debuted a bunch of their kind of new technology, kind of their new things that they're going to be doing. And they released their new iPhone, a new Apple Watch, and many more things. And I hope that we can kind of look into see kind of the pros and the cons and kind of talk about what Apple has become as generally a company. Obviously, the big story with the Apple event is going to be the release of the new iPhone. Um, Initial thoughts on the iPhone. Yes, it is obviously it's better than the previous one, but at this point, um, I'm just waiting for every year a little incremental change from year to year. Yeah, the technology, the specs, the technical stuff gets better on it, but does that really make a difference? I'm not sure. Year after year, I feel as though there is a common theme with the iPhones where they add one extra feature and they kind of do that at the time. Maybe it's part of their business plan because maybe they have ideas for phones in the future where they're looking 5, 6 years down the line. But and in order to keep up with the technology, they have to release a phone every year, and it doesn't really make sense for them to release a phone with so many features that they don't have any ideas to go back to the drawing board for that next year when they release that next phone. So I do think there's a little bit of that tactic and a little bit of that strategy that they use when they approach designing their phones in particular and adding new features, increasing the chips, increasing the screen clarity, the camera quality, all that stuff. Year to year, I feel as though that's not something that they're striving to create the best phone that they've ever done year to year because I don't think it's sustainable. I think that they have multiple years of policies and products that they're going to add to these phones, different technologies, different iOS software updates, that kind of stuff that they plan years in the future. But let's talk about the new Apple event in itself. This is USA Today, kind of giving us to start off before we kind of jump into things, just a general overview. Obviously, prices are going to be one of the biggest things here and determining on what you're going to buy. New Apple Watch, 4 iPhone models, lot of stuff. All right, so let's start with the iPhone 15. The main thing here is for me is there's a new side button, the USB-C charging, which I think is actually a good thing. I wish that they have done that sooner. And yeah, just the camera quality was something that really stuck out to me as well. All right, so iPhone 15, iPhone 15 Plus, iPhone 15 Pro, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. The standard iPhone, the 15, just base model, is $799. And the 15 Plus, which is a little bit bigger, is going to start at $899. And here we have a 6.1-inch display for the iPhone 15 and a 6.7-inch display for the 15 Plus. Now I have the 13 Pro Max or whatever it is, and I love it. I mean, it works fine. All right. That's kind of what I got. And it is cool to see, particularly with a model. Now, this is two models in the past, and there is significant changes even from two models ago to the current one in terms of technical specifications. There's not, yeah, you have the differences in the screen and kind of the layout. You don't have as many notches as you have with the current iPhone, but still, overall, the design has slightly updated. The number one thing, personally, for me, is the camera. I think that is the biggest, and I'll explain why later. The biggest improvement that was made by the company. The standard iPhone 15 model will have an improved camera system that will allow for greater optical zoom, switching from a 12 megapixel main camera sensor to a 48 megapixel version. So 4 times as good camera quality already. Now, I have a 12 megapixel main camera sensor, and the pictures that I can take with it are ridiculous. I mean, the zoom on the phone that I currently have, the 13 Pro Max, is ridiculous. You can zoom into things that are hundreds, if not thousands of feet away from you and still take relatively accurate and good pictures. I remember having an iPhone Touch and trying to take a picture, trying to take a selfie in my bedroom, or take a picture even across the room at something that was laying on the floor, was impossible. You just could not see it. And now we are in a time where that is a thing of the past. You could take things in basically no light and the pictures still look amazing. Now, the Pro series, 2 sizes and 4 different finishes. The 15 Pro, which is the higher end version, starts at $999, while the Pro Max will start at $1199. The iPhone 15 Pro will have titanium sides, which replace the stainless steel used since the iPhone 10. The iPhone 15 Pro models will also have the faster A17 chip that the company claims will improve the mobile gaming experience. And as you can see, the camera right there, which we'll get into in a second. But first, I'm not sure how many actual users of iPhones are particularly playing games. I would imagine that it can't be too large of a percentage of people. I'm not sure about that, but I do think that people obviously play games on the phones. I myself do. But unless it was my iPhone XR and I was years and years past, I mean, I think I got that when I was a sophomore in college. And I had that pretty much up until maybe a year ago. And then I broke it and I had to get a new phone. And the major issue that I had with that phone was overheating. One, because if you would play a game and it's obviously updated and it's up to the standards of the new iPhones, where they have certain demands that they have, the particular apps, they have demands of processing power, how big of a file it actually is. And a older phone trying to run that same program, compared to even an iPhone 13, iPhone 14, iPhone 12, an iPhone XR just doesn't even even hold up. So what would happen would be is that my phone would heat up, and I mean really heat up. I would play a game, even with my phone plugged in, unplugged, didn't matter. My phone within 30 minutes of trying to play any type of game, like a common game I would play would be like Call of Duty or something that takes a lot of energy and a lot of processing power. But after 30 minutes, I would get a notification on my phone. Hey, your phone is way too hot. You can't play this. Can't play this game anymore. You have to shut down your phone. And ultimately what I would do is, and I still do this sometimes today, I would take my phone and I would either put it in the fridge or I would put it in the freezer. And if you put it in the freezer for about 30 seconds to a minute, it can really cool down the phone very well. So that's one of those things that I did back with my old phone, and now I still do it because I do have a wireless charger that you can see has the MagSafe capability on it, and I connect that to my phone sometimes if I need to charge it and I don't have a cable around me. It it charges like maybe like 50% of the battery or something. It's not super crazy. It's more so to just kind of keep me going throughout the day. But the issue with that is I don't know if it's because of the magnetism, but the sticking together makes it so hot. And I think that um one of the reasons why is because, like I said, the magnetism, but also because I'm watching videos at the same time. When I tell you my screen time on my phone is very high, we're talking maybe 10 hours a day. And now that's not all on the notes app or social media. Like, let's check today. Although today I was working, technically today. I worked last night 9 p.m. till 5 a.m. this morning. So there is a lot between the midnight to 5 a.m. hour of when I was on my phone. But if we're just going by today, I have 9 hours and 30 minutes of screen time today. I have 3 hours and 2 minutes of YouTube, 2 hours and 42 minutes of TikTok, 2 hours, 31 minutes of Spotify, and then just 23 minutes of messages. And that's kind of it. The rest are 10 minutes and under. So the majority of the phone use that I do is listening to podcasts, particularly with YouTube, watching podcasts. With Spotify, you can shut your phone off, and so that screen doesn't have to constantly be on, right? So that's one way that I help to not only conserve battery, but also keep the screen from being off and overheating to a sense. But hopefully with this new chip, um, it kind of diminishes the overall impact that a certain game is going to have on your phone, and that a certain thing that you're trying to run on your phone, trying to watch a movie, trying to open up Netflix or whatever you may have it, watch YouTube videos. Once you get to later and later versions, this chip is going to still be able to keep up with those later and later games. And I've seen it completely evident with my current phone, the 13 Pro Max, where the same games that I used to play on my XR, where, like I said, I would have to put my phone down 30 minutes. And then I couldn't hold it in my hand because it was so hot. And I even had a case on it. I'd have to take the case off and just throw it in the freezer for about a minute, which is very annoying. But with the new phone, I can play a game for an hour or two. Now I usually don't play a particular game. I mostly spend my time watching videos, but even with the videos, unless I have the screen on full blast and I have it going and I have it also charging with my external charger, maybe in about 45 minutes to an hour does my phone start to get really hot. And the charging block doesn't even usually last an hour of charging. Especially once I get up to a higher percentage of my phone, it really starts to slow down. I just think that's because the actual charging block itself gets hot and the efficiency isn't as high. But let's hope that with this new chip that these problems are going to be reduced. That's probably the main factor. And then another factor is that the people who complain about having issues with their older phones slowing down after an update, that's kind of the idea with these chips right here, where you're going to update to iOS 20 whatever, and now you have an iPhone 50 and it's a couple years old, but because of that chip's performance, it's still able to run those later programs that require more data and more processing power, which is ultimately a good thing. You never want to see them come out with a new iPhone and they don't have a new chip. That's a little interesting. If that ever happens where they keep the same chip. Now I can't speak for past phones because like I said, I went from XR to 13 Pro Max. During that in between time I was interested in the phones, once the iPhone 10 came out and there was no home button anymore, I was like, whoa, that was a really cool thing. After that, I started keeping a little attention to the iPhone developments, but for the most part, I wasn't paying attention, so I can't speak to those older versions. However, going back to the article again, USA Today, and going back to particularly the thing that I think is, I wouldn't say it's the most important, but I thought it was one of the biggest improvements that I've seen in a phone in quite some time. The camera, the 48 megapixel camera, and also another cool thing is 5 times optical zoom. Currently, right now with the 13, and I think the 14 as well. I'll check that later. You can go up to 3 times zoom, and like I said earlier, that's a crazy zoom, and it's still super clear, and there's not really any issues with it. And I use that to take many of my pictures in Portugal. But this isn't a feature that all people will really care too much about. I mean, people, unless you're some type of photographer or you like taking videos or you're like a content creator of some kind, or you're just interested in the updated changes, then you'll really care about this feature. I don't really care about it. I think it is one of the most impactful things of the phone itself, and I'll talk about some other features of the phone as well that I think are super cool as well. But the new camera, probably my biggest improvement on the device in terms of a performance aspect. Moving on to the Apple Watch, the Series 9. I've had an Apple Watch since I was in college, since I was probably maybe a freshman or sophomore. That's when I got really big into working out. I wasn't as big into diet. I was into working out, but I was not into diet. And I would use the Apple Watch to like kind of track all my workouts to see kind of what my fitness level was. I would also use it for runs. I love using it for that. Keeping pace and kind of all the heart rate stuff, all that stuff, and it goes right into your health app and you can kind of track your progress and your performance over time. Super, super helpful. But the new Apple Watch 9, you can kind of see in this little graphic right here, it's got fast charging, carbon neutral, Siri health queries, new cycling features, new bands, crash detection, a brighter display, advanced cycle tracking, HomePad integration, a new gesture for Apple Watch, on-device Siri, and a new chip. And this thing is pretty sleek. I think I have like the Series 5 or something. Like I'm super behind. The primary upgrade for this comes with a new processing chip called the S9 SiP, which the company claims it will be faster than the one introduced in 2020. I would hope it's faster. It will have updated colors, including pink, starlight, and silver. It's double tap. The feature allows users to answer a call or control any number of actions in an app by tapping their index finger and thumb together twice. That's a really cool feature. That's kind of what a new gesture. And you can see kind of up in this photo right here. What is that looking like? Right? We, I mean, how many people are really going to be using that? If you're out there in public, you're on public transport and you start clicking your fingers together, are people going to think you're weird? I'm not too sure. But this is going to be priced at $399 and it's going to come out September 22nd. So if you are looking for a new watch, with I guess the screen brightness is also crazy. I think that screen brightness is more than even on my phone. The new gesture is cool. I have no idea how that works, but that is a cool thing. But now their second edition of their Ultra, the Apple Watch Ultra. Now this thing comes in almost like one of those Garmin smartwatches, which are crazy, 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 technologically advanced. Similar to the Series 9, the Apple Watch Ultra 2 will have the double tap feature and the S9 SIP processor. Okay. Will have on-device Siri, enabling faster, more accurate responses. And this will be $799. And there's just so many more features to this than the other Apple Watch. I really do suggest that you go check this thing out. I mean, it's got some crazy technology in it and crazy performance as well. And then next, Apple confirmed that its phones will move away from the company's Lightning charging system to a USB-C port. And it will begin with the iPhone 15 line and AirPod charging case. Another thing that you can do is charge using that USB-C port in the actual phone and connect it outwards to, say, your AirPods case, or say to anything else that can be connected via that USB-C port, which is a very cool function. I know Samsung has a function where you can kind of charge another phone with your phone, and you can transfer over battery to another device or even another phone, which I think is a cool feature as well. More than 30 people watched the Apple event. That is a lot of stuff. All right, moving on. Now going on to kind of see Apple and see right here. Let's go into the iPhone 15 first. Kind of take a look at what we're seeing right here. I mean, it looks beautiful. Obviously, it's very nice. Get the highlights. Still have that same dynamic island, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, the camera right here. Click and swipe. Now have dive into the display. The dynamic island stays right here, and I think that is one of the cool things that they have added to the phone. I mean, it was in last year's phone, the 14, but I think overall that was a good idea, just to have as much screen as you possibly can on these things. All kinds of activities, keeps getting more and more helpful. I mean, with flights, that's super, super nice. Trains and stuff, that would be nice. Weather. A display that shines bright. Super Retina XDR display is up to twice as bright in the sun compared to iPhone 14, and you'll really notice the difference. That's one of the things that I don't like about these things, is that I just don't feel like they're bright enough when I go outside. And this was even worse on the XR. If I took it outside full brightness, it was overheating super fast, but two, it was almost impossible to see what I was looking at on the screen in the middle of the day. All right, it has back glass that has color infused throughout the material. So that's kind of staying the same. Same exact water resistance profile as the previous phone, so nothing changing there. And then the camera right here. I mean, this demonstration is pretty cool, but let's take a deep look at these 48 megapixel cameras, which is, like I said, 4 times better than the previous one. More room to zoom, 3 Optical quality zoom levels let you effortlessly frame the perfect shot from right where you are. Perfect close-up, detailed middle shots, ultra wide camera. The night mode activates in especially dark scenes. Very, very cool. Smart HDR. True depth camera. That is something that I think that they have changed, or a new feature that they have for the actual camera is that it'll focus on people's faces when you're taking a picture, both front and back camera. So you can use basically portrait mode if you needed to in a later date to kind of fade out the background, so you could only see those people's faces in the image, or in something as simple as a FaceTime call as well. All right, 4K HDR videos, very, very cool. Yeah, I think having this is a big upgrade. Now this is just the iPhone 15. I remember that with this 48 megapixel. This isn't even the upgrade ones. And then here it is talking about that that focus, the portrait mode. More detail and richer color make a dramatic difference in your portraits. And now you can tap to shift the focus between subjects even after you take the shot, which is a very, very cool feature to have right here. Video playback, 26 hours on iPhone 15 Plus, and 20 hours of video playback on iPhone 15. Up to 3 additional hours of video playback compared to iPhone 12. Okay, so definitely have made some improvements. Now, let's kind of go into the iPhone 15 Pro, and kind of right here, there's not really going to be too much of a difference, but if you see right here off the bat, there's a button on the side. Obviously, the new chip made of titanium. Very cool. Looks very sleek. Very sleek. Obviously, the gaming, 6-core GPU. Camera is pretty crazy. Multiple focal lengths, 7 pro lenses in your pocket. So you have ultra wide 0.5x. Yeah, you can see you got the macro 13 millimeter, 24 millimeter, 28 millimeter, 35 millimeter. Now 2x telephoto going to 48 millimeter, and 5x telephoto 120 millimeter. The 48 megapixel main camera is more advanced than ever, capturing super high resolution photos with a new level of detail and color. You'll see the improvements in your portraits, and now you no longer have to switch to portrait mode. If your subject is a person, dog, cat, iPhone automatically captures depth information. So you can choose to instantly see your photo as a portrait with an artificial blur effect, or later in the Photos app. 120 things right here. I mean, just crazy level of zoom on this thing, and looking more closely to kind of see right here, the fact that they have this in such a small thing is pretty insane, pretty intense. Up to 10,000 micro adjustments a second. So it's helping making your pictures look a little bit better. Yeah, the zoom on this thing is going to be crazy, crazy, crazy. Moving on to the next thing. The other thing that I think is a super, super important part of this phone, and important feature, is the action button. This thing looks crazy. So instead of that little switch that's going to be on the side of the iPhone 15 and all previous models, that little switch to the side where you can turn the ringer on and off, they put a button there, and then they allow you to customize what that button does. So if you want to, you can still have that button be the ringer on and off mode, which is fine. But you can also make that button turn on a particular do not disturb function, or turn on the camera, or maybe you want to use that as a flashlight And instead of pulling down the menu and selecting the flashlight, you could just press this button on the side and it'll turn on for you. Or if you want to record a voice memo, you can do that as well. If you want to translate what somebody is saying, you can do that as well. If you want to magnify something, if you want to get a closer look at something, you can do that as well. Or you can add your own shortcut. So you can have this attached to where you press this button and it can open any app on your phone, or it can do a process for you, say like get me directions to go to work. If you just press this button on the side, you'll get directions no matter where you are to go to your job, to go home, to do this, to do that. You can basically turn it into a button that can do just about anything for the phone, which is cool. Can run a series of tasks. Yeah, and then obviously with the cord as well, the connectivity. This is obviously the big story, because this is their first change to their charging since I believe it's 2012. So the iPhone 15 Pro is the first iPhone to support USB 3 for a huge leap in data transfer speeds and faster Pro workflows than ever before. USB-C lets you charge your Mac or iPad with the same cable used to charge your iPhone 15 Pro, and up to 20 times faster file transfers. And also the USB-Cs I find are much harder to actually break the tip of it. Sometimes with the lightning cables, that little copper on the inside sometimes can get dirty, and then over time that'll decrease the rate of charge, and then also ultimately will not allow you to connect and charge your phone at all, which is something you definitely don't want. New Wi-Fi, so 2 times faster wireless speeds, which is good. New battery on these things. I mean, up to 29 hours on the 15 Pro Max and 23 hours on the 15 Pro. Definitely a big update there. I always love to have more battery powered. Yep. And then they also are going to have iOS 17 on it. So I'm very excited to see this. And one function of iOS 17, I don't know if I touched on this last time, but that I talked about the iPhone itself, was the ability to share if you have a Apple keychain. I don't know exactly what it's called. It's the device that you use to track things. AirTag, Apple AirTag. Yes, you can share the location of your AirTag with somebody else. So, for example, Carmela, our dog, she's sleeping right next to me right now. We have a collar for her that has an AirTag in it, and I set it up, and so I'm only able to have access to that. But with iOS 17, I can share that AirTag location with my wife. So if she runs away and I'm not home and I'm not able to get to my phone, my wife can look up where her location is. So super important. All right, now we'll kind of go through some differences between these phones and do a face by face comparison. So we have the iPhone 15 right here, and we can all kind of do, let's all do the black and kind of keep it across the board right there. You can see the difference between the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Pro, and the Pro Max as well, obviously. But just the difference in between the color of those two. Obviously, the titanium is making it look a little bit differently, and hopefully, in the final product, it actually is very sleek. Obviously, the big difference in price. Always on display for the Pro and the Pro Max, and a ProMotion technology as well, just making the screen look better. That's a big difference between right here. And then obviously Dynamic Island, the new chip, still same exact camera system, although there are more zoom options for the Pro and the Pro Max compared to the iPhone 15 itself. Obviously, major update for the battery, and then you can see USB-C, supports USB 2, supports USB 3 for up to 20 times faster transfers. That's on both the Pro and the Pro Max. So if you were to transfer files, say a photo album from your iPhone 15 Pro Max to your laptop, say you have 1,000 photos that you took and it's 20 to 30 gigs of data. If you were to do it on a Pro or a Pro Max compared to an iPhone 15, it would be actually faster. Obviously, Face ID, ceramic shell, aerospace grade titanium on the iPhone 15 Pro, and aluminum for the iPhone 15. And then sizes as well in terms of capacity for storage. So you get 128 gigs starting off with the iPhone 15. And on the 15 Pro, that's what the starting point is. But on the Pro Max, you get a starting point of 256. And now for both of the Pros, you can get up to a terabyte. And then with the iPhone 15, you can get up to 512 gigabytes. And then you can see right here in terms of the display, that always on function, but the ProMotion technology with adaptive refresh rates up to 120 hertz. So very fast refresh rate, which basically means you see stuff a lot better and it's a lot clearer and it's a lot more responsive. It just overall looks a lot better. And then haptic touch, you can see the difference in brightness is none, height, weight, all that stuff. Still pretty much the exact same splash, water, and dust resistance as old models. I mean, definitely don't want these things falling in the water. It's just more of a hassle than anything. And then camera right here, night mode portraits, macro photography, and Apple Pro RAW on the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max compared to the iPhone 15. And then obviously with that, you will have some differences in video recording as well. You'll still have the action mode, cinematic mode, slow motion, time lapse, all that stuff. But you'll get log video recording, ProRes video recording up to 4K at 60 FPS with external recording, Academy color encoding system, macro video recording, including slow-mo and time lapse for the Pro and the Pro Max. So, I mean, not too much in the difference of stuff that, unless you're a film creator, that doesn't really matter to you. Like I said, the main thing that's going to matter is going to be just, frankly, the actual quality, that 48 megapixel card. And then everything's the same. And now let's go to the 15 plus. There's not going to be really any difference here. You're not going to see new crazy differences with anything here. It's all going to stay pretty much the same. It's just going to be the size. The size is going to be a little bit larger for the 15 plus. It's just going to be this pretty much the same size as the Pro Max, but just not of the same quality, and especially not that same side action button, which I think is also flying under the radar. I thought that would be a major thing because that's a change that Apple's never done. I mean, they've never changed that button on the side. But kind of wrapping things up, you can see here's a write-up by Engadget talking about the difference right here. I definitely do recommend you going down and watching here, especially with the stuff about the Apple Watch series. I'm not really going to cover that just because I don't think that's as interesting. If you like the Apple Watch, go read this article. They do a great breakdown on both of the watches here, and then also they do touch on the software a little bit, which fortunately is coming out in a couple of days. So that's coming out in about, from the time of this recording, about 5 days. So it's coming out on the 18th, which I am very, very much looking forward to. I do think that we will see a lot of people hopefully I mean, the obviously with the price, the price is the number one thing, but I really hope to see a lot of people kind of just go to the Pro and the Pro Max options. I mean, obviously those are more expensive, as I just said, but I mean that action button is very intriguing, and I think that they probably should have included that on the 15. Like, why do they need to not have that? One of their things that they've done in the past is this iPhone SE, which is basically let's take a old phone design but put really good parts in it. So this is the SE. They gave it back a home button for those people who really wanted that. Has an A15 chip, which even if you go back to say iPhone, let's just do an iPhone X. It has an A11 chip. I mean, the difference is crazy in the terms of the performance of this. Yeah, even the second generation one, A13 chip, and the third generation of it with the A15 chip. So still different results, but still an all around great phone. And I unfortunately think that's where they're kind of going with the iPhone 15, just like that base model. Now, understandable if people don't want to spend $1,200-$1,300 with tax on a phone. I understand that. But for the performance that you're going to get out of the Maxes, especially with that action button, especially with those different file transfer speeds, I think those are kind of the big selling factors right here. But besides that, the difference in the camera, if you're not a professional photographer, I really don't think that people are going to really see all that much of a difference. But I do hope that you can go look into see what the new iPhone is. Look at it compared to the 14 to the 13, no matter which one you have. Do a little bit of a comparison because I just think it's important. All right. Moving on to our next story. Let's talk a little bit about the moon. Very, very cool video that I saw on Twitter the other day, and I thought I wanted to kind of talk about it and then also talk about the moon. And this is going to be another edition of just how lucky we are to be alive on this planet. So NASA Ames Research Center and Durham University put out this 3D model of a simulation of what happened when they believe that the moon impacted with our Earth. Now, obviously, it takes a lot of research in order to prove that this actually happened, but using computer models and using samples that they have collected both from moon and lunar missions, both manned and unmanned, they have put together all of this data into a massive computer, and it turned out a result in which they were able to provide a visual aspect of actually what happened and what we can think created our moon. So we can kind of see this right here. Let's take a look. A fresh take on the origin of Earth's moon. See that first crash right there? The rippling. And they are saying that the moon most likely formed in just a matter of hours. And you can see the different, if we stop it right here, the different separations. So on the far left is Earth right there. In the middle is a bunch of matter that's ultimately going to get sucked back into the Earth itself. And then you'll see what happens to this far right outermost piece. Another crash back into the Earth. And then voila. So here we have a close-up right here. And as you can see right here, Here, I'll slow down the playback speed. We'll go at quarter speed right here, and you can see, let's go back a little bit. So you can kind of see right here, the shifting and the pull right here. That looks almost like an egg when it's this close to the Earth because of the gravitational force of the Earth. You remember, talked about it before, but the core of the Earth is metal, basically. And so it has very, very dense and a lot of mass. Or it is very dense and it has a lot of mass. But so as the moon gets closer to Earth, it gets pulled into Earth, and you can see this almost spaghettification right here. There, it crashes into it, sends a shock wave throughout the entire Earth, breaks it apart, and it creates just this rippling effect on the planet, which is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, look right here. I mean, that's just a crazy visual. Imagine being a observer to that. Three forms two different bodies right here. You can see the Earth is recovering, and in some aspect, it's still jiggling from that massive impact. Now let's go back to the normal speed right here. You can see it. And like I said earlier, far left, middle, far right. Watch what happens. That further piece out there is going to become what we now know as the moon. And that rest is going to be drawn back into the Earth and become a piece of the Earth. The gravity of the larger bodies propels the smaller body forward. And as you can see, boom, that gets sucked in. And then that far right piece now turns into an orbit around our planet. Simulation opens up new possibilities to the moon's evolution, not creation, but the evolution, and will help researchers better understand the intertwined history of Earth and the moon. Because the moon is, believe it or not, pretty important. All right. Moving on to our next story. If it'll let me switch it right here. All right, perfect. This is University of Chicago, an article about how the actual moon itself formed. You saw the video right there to kind of give a visual aspect, but now let's kind of talk about how it happened. It's, to this point, very widely believed that it was a collision from a foreign object that came and collided with a very early version of our planet. So, over 4.6 billion years ago, out of a mixture of dust and gas around the young sun, the Earth was formed. It grew larger thanks to countless collisions between dust particles, asteroids, and other growing planets, including one last giant impact that threw enough rock, gas, and dust into space to form the moon. Although the rocks that record the earliest parts of Earth's history have been destroyed or deformed over time by more than 4 billion years of geology, scientists can use modern rocks, moon samples, and meteorites to figure out when and how the Earth and moon formed, and what they might once have looked like. So, big question is, how did it form? It was obviously, by most people's guess, it was a collision of some sort. The dust particles were brought together by the forces of drag to form clumps of rock that grew into what scientists called planetesimals, which are tens to hundreds of miles across, and then to Mars-sized protoplanets by colliding with each other. So Mars size, so fairly large planets. Mars is smaller than the Earth, but it still is a pretty big object. Earth grew to its final size through one last major collision with another Mars-sized object. This last collision, also known as the moon-forming impact, was so large that, in addition to adding lots of material to the Earth, there was enough energy to vaporize some of the rock and metal from both the proto-Earth and the impacting object. This vapor formed a disk around the Earth that eventually cooled and clumped together to become the moon. We know this thanks to the rigorous studies of meteorites and rock samples, including at the University of Chicago in the 20th and 21st century. Understanding how the Earth and moon formed is important for piecing together the history of the solar system and answering questions like how long planets take to form, what planets are made of, and what makes a planet sustainable for life, which is what I care about. I want to know what gives life. Now they go on to talk about the early Earth forming, and now let's go on to the moon. Several different formation theories for the moon have been proposed by scientists. The story that is best supported by all the available data, however, is that the moon formed during a giant impact between the proto-Earth and another protoplanet roughly the size of Mars, sometimes called Theia. So, very early version of Earth was chilling out there, rotating in orbit around our sun. And due to the gravitational force of our home planet, Earth, it brought a foreign object, what they list here as a protoplanet, which basically just means a smaller planet that doesn't have like an atmosphere or anything. It's basically just a giant rock roaming throughout space. And then it got pulled into the gravity of Earth and ultimately crashed. And like we saw in the in that video, in that computer simulation, it not only did it just hit one time and then kind of just go, it continued to orbit around and continue to break off more and more and more. And then ultimately the Earth kind of got what it got. And then the moon was created as a little piece broken off from that in a orbit around our planet. In this theory, the moon formed from the impact debris, a mixture of molten rock and hot gas flung out into space by the impact, potentially forming a disk of material known as a lunar synestia. However, there are some other theories. There is a theory that the moon broke away from the Earth. So, kind of the idea is that the Earth was just hanging out, and then due to a certain force or a certain action, a piece of the Earth broke off, and then that kind of shifted out into the orbit of where the moon is currently now. Another one is the moon formed elsewhere in the solar system and was captured by Earth's gravity. So in this case, there is no collision, which creates a breaking up of these two bodies where one body kind of sucks up most of the mass and then the other one just kind of goes out into a kind of close orbit and orbits around that thing. This is just a moon or something about the size of the moon is passing by, and as the Earth is going through its orbit, it catches just at the right time this moon in this, I guess, protoplanet, as we have been referring to it as. And then that is what, without any collision, without any real, I guess, injury or any effect on the Earth outside of just low gravitationally, then that would start to orbit. Now, okay, they do have some examples of, I believe they have some examples of the kind of or wait, no, that's something else. I was going to say they have evidence of the moon particles from the collision here on Earth, but that is not possible because, I mean, the reason why they do believe it was a collision is because if there wasn't, or if there was a collision, then it would have gotten so hot and so so destructive that there really wouldn't be any particles that we could see from something that happened billions of years ago in a fiery explosion and collision. And then the third alternate theory that they have listed here is that Earth and moon formed from the protoplanetary disk at the same time. So, quick backstory, protoplanet disk is going to be when the sun was first forming and the gas that kind of started that early fusion around on the interior of the sun, which started the sun up and allowed for it to fuse hydrogen into helium and ultimately allowed for the sun to create. There was a giant gas cloud around it. And within that gas cloud was metals and different elements that would ultimately make up our planets that we have today. And so there was this kind of disk that would form around the sun, kind of like a pancake almost. And the reason for that is because the sun was turning. And due to the force of the turn, like if you take a pizza dough and you spin it around, it's not going to stay in a ball. It's going to kind of flatten out on a straight surface. Same thing happens with the sun or other stars that we observe elsewhere into our galaxy. And so kind of what this is pointing to is maybe during that period of where there's this layer, this pizza disk on the exterior of the sun that's orbiting around the sun, there were pockets there where we are fairly certain that the Earth formed via the protoplanetary disk and certain elements within it that make up the core of our Earth. Those kind of joined in together, and then many other different factors, including meteors or asteroids or direct impacts with that young Earth planet, would ultimately add more mass, would add different elements to the crust of the Earth. And then over the course of billions of years, it would eventually become what we now know today, where we have an atmosphere, we have oceans, we have mountains, we have what we have today. But that started from a protoplanetary disk where you're going to have a lot of different elements kind of forming around the early sun. Now, next section is how do we know? How do we know that this particular theory of a collision, how do we know that that's the most likely one? What's the data? What's the science? Samples of rock from the moon brought to Earth by lunar meteorites and the Apollo moon landings can be used to understand the history of the moon and its relationship to the Earth through the chemistry of their minerals. Now, this would just be very awkward if they faked those moon landing missions, which you can debate whether or not that actually happened in terms of did the moon landing actually happen? I'm not going to tell you it did or it didn't. I would like to lean on the side of that it did because they have rocks from the moon and can analyze these things for yourself. Obviously not me or you, but people in labs have analyzed these things and they're like, yeah, that's the moon. That's not from here. But you have people like planetary scientist Nicholas Doufus and Professor Andy Davis in the Geophysical Sciences Department at the University of Chicago make precise measurements of lunar samples to determine exactly what they're made of and identify the chemical fingerprints of different geological processes like the melting and mixing of rocks and the evaporation of gases. The first big clue about where the moon came from comes from oxygen. Oxygen, like many other elements, is able to exist in multiple forms known as isotopes. Different types of meteorites coming from the asteroids left over in the solar system after planet formation have different proportions of each of these oxygen isotopes. So, by measuring the oxygen isotopes of a given planet, planetary scientists can calculate the different types of asteroid that collided to form the planet. Lunar samples have a very similar oxygen isotope makeup to the Earth. So it's fairly likely based on what we now see in terms of different things that when it got so hot, to go back to an earlier point, when it got so hot from that collision, that these things started mixing together, metals were turned into liquid, and then ultimately as they cooled over time they hardened and they formed back into solids, but still they were mixed together. And so when we take samples from the moon and bring them back here to Earth, they look as though they've been mixed into a giant pot. Some scientists believe that the oxygen isotopes are because the object that hit Earth was made up of the same mixture of meteorites as the Earth itself, potentially suggesting that the impactor planet formed close by in the solar system. Other scientists propose that after the impact, all of the oxygen was able to move around in the hot vapor surrounding the Earth and Moon, mixing up all the different oxygen isotopes and erasing any original differences between the Earth and Theia. So maybe there is no difference. However, there are differences between the chemistry of the Earth and Moon. At the high temperature reaches during planetary impacts, many elements that we are not used to thinking of as gases, like potassium, zinc, and sodium, can exist as vapor. You heat something up enough, it's going to change. The concentrations of these volatile elements are much lower in lunar rocks than in rocks on Earth. One possibility is that the hot impact debris had a long time to evaporate these elements before it clumped together to form the moon. Another is that when the moon formed, it started off very hot with a deep magma ocean, like the Earth. And the low gravity and lack of atmosphere on the moon allowed volatile elements that wouldn't escape from a large object to evaporate into space. So those potassium, zinc, and sodium. Both of these pieces of evidence are hard to explain without a giant impact. An impact origin for the moon provides the high temperatures needed to explain the lack of potassium, zinc, and sodium on the moon, and also an opportunity for lots of mixing between the proto-Earth and the material that would have become the moon. But when did this impact take place? Good to know. Didn't happen in 1926. Happened many millions of years ago. Scientists believe the moon formed during a giant impact about 60 to 175 million years after the solar system was born. To arrive at this estimate, they can use rocks from Earth. As large planetesimals grow, heat was released by repeated impacts and the radioactive decay elements inside their minerals, enough to cause melting. This allows materials with different densities to separate, with metals like iron and nickel sinking to the inside to form a core and lighter rocks floating on top. And you can see this from an Apollo 15 mission, this lunar rock that was brought back. Very cool. By the time of the moon forming impact, the Earth was already separated into these rock and metal layers. However, the intense force and heat of the impact remelted the proto-Earth, remixing the separate rock and metal. After this mixing, the Earth was still hot enough for separation to occur again and form new rock and metal layers. This is the key to dating when the moon was formed. So, the Earth was still hot enough for separation to occur and form new rock and metal layers. When rock and metal mix, they are able to swap certain elements. Elements like hafnium prefer to be mixed in with rock than with metal. Hafnium decays over about 10 million years to form tungsten. The first time the Earth cooled and separated into rock and metal layers was early in the solar system history. So lots of hafnium was present in the Earth's rocky layer because it hadn't had much time to decay to tungsten yet. Yeah, 10 million years is not a quick afternoon stroll. By the time the moon forming impact occurred, much of this early hafnium had decayed to tungsten. Elements like tungsten preferred to be mixed in with metal, so when the impact remixed the Earth, the newly formed tungsten sank into the metal core. This created a rocky outer layer with a lower concentration of hafnium than before and a metal core with much more tungsten in it. Today, all of the hafnium is gone because it has a short half-life compared to the age of the Earth. However, not all is lost. This makes it very useful for working out the timing of the events in the first 100 million years of the solar system's history. The concentration of tungsten in Earth's rocks depends on when the most recent separation into rock and metal layers occurred. The concentration of tungsten in Earth's rocks is too low to be explained by the metal and rock separating early on, which means something must have remixed the Earth's layer. The best explanation for the heat and energy needed to do this is a giant impact about 60 to 175 million years after the solar system was born. Take a look at this video. This is kind of a similar thing to the previous video that we saw, you can see some differences with this one. Not as much in terms of that massive separation in just right here. I mean, take a look at that. And as that kind of explodes and you can see almost a tail forms out of the earth. And then compare that to this video right here where there is a brief moment of that, right? When it first makes impact right here. You kind of see that, but immediately on that outer edge, you can see where the moon is eventually going to be formed. And you can see that inside ring area right there is going to go into the earth, as we will see. Boom. Gets sucked into the earth, and that goes right there. So different than this one. I will trust the other one more so. And then the article continues to talk about what the early Earth and moon looked like. And then finally, let's talk about the questions that remain, because it is not settled science that there was this impact. Like I said, there are multiple different ways to kind of look at the addition of the moon in our solar system. Although scientists agree that the moon formed because of an impact, the details of the impact are still up for debate. Scientists still don't agree on how big the impacting object was, how fast it was traveling, what it was made from, or even whether we should be calling it Thea. I mean, I don't. That last one didn't need to be added. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the name of it is. Some scientists even argue that multiple impacts might have formed the moon instead of just one, which is an interesting thing. If there was, say, 5, 6 different impacts and those came from outside of the solar system or those came from inside of the solar system, to go back to that point about the protoplanetary disk that surrounded our early sun. Lab experiments help scientists better understand what happens to different rock types and elements under the extreme conditions of large impact events. Professor Nicholas Doufus' research group at U Chicago evaporates metals under a vacuum to simulate the conditions present in the cloud of impact debris to try and explain why lunar rocks have so much less elements like sodium, zinc, and potassium compared to the Earth. So maybe we got some. We got some that was delivered to us via a massive rock. Some experiments can be too large for the lab, though, so computer simulations are also used to investigate the moon-forming impact. These simulations enable scientists to virtually smash together the proto-Earth and different types of planetesimals at many speeds and angles to figure out what combinations of properties are more able to form a moon with the size and orbit we see today. In the future, new samples from the moon could give us planetary scientists a wider range of different lunar rock types to work with. This is important because new samples might record different pieces of the moon's history that aren't present in the existing lunar rocks brought back by the Apollo missions. As measurement techniques improve, planetary scientists will also be able to measure new chemical signatures in lunar rocks and improve upon existing measurements. The more measurements scientists have, the more ways they can test different theories about how our moon formed, its relationship to the Earth, and perhaps even how moons might be born around other planets far beyond our solar system. Very, very interesting, right there. And then to kind of top it all off, it did mention something in this last section that I do want to talk about. The more measurements scientists have, the more ways they can test different theories about how our moon formed, its relationship to the Earth, perhaps even how moons might be formed, blah, 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 blah. So obviously with the Artemis mission in full swing, I do think part of the idea with that is to ultimately create a base on the moon. And by doing so, that would allow for these stations ultimately to be made where you can dock in onto the moon and potentially send back either a person from the moon back to Earth or back to the International Space Station, whatever it may be, or to some other craft, to bring back both humans and materials from the moon itself so that we can investigate and see kind of what the moon is made out of. Because if we know the contents of the moon and we know the contents of the Earth, and we see that there are parts from the Earth that are in the moon that are at higher concentrations than we would have thought, then that could rule out something like the moon just came into the orbit of the Earth, did not collide with the Earth at all, and was just a completely foreign body that was independent from the Earth. If we are able to say there are these certain elements that are in both Earth and in moon soil, moon rock, then we can flatly feel more confident in saying that it was a collision between the Earth and the moon. And speaking of the Earth, the moon, and the events on our planet that helped to pave the way for our species to survive, let's talk about a massive, massive story that is happening right now in the world of finding life elsewhere. NASA.gov. Webb discovers methane, carbon dioxide, and atmosphere of K2-18b. A new investigation with NASA's James Webb Space Telescope into K2-18b. An exoplanet 8.6 times as massive as Earth has revealed the presence of carbon-bearing molecules, including methane and carbon dioxide. Webb's discovery adds to recent studies suggesting that K2-18b could be a Hycean exoplanet, one which has the potential to possess a hydrogen-rich atmosphere and water ocean-covered surface. I'll talk about what a Hycean exoplanet is later. The first insight into the atmospheric properties of this habitable zone exoplanet comes from observation with NASA's Hubble Space Telescope, which prompted further studies that have since changed our understanding of this system. So this planet orbits a cool dwarf star, K2-18, in the habitable zone and lies 120 light years from Earth in the constellation Leo. Exoplanets such as K2-18b, which have sizes between those of Earth and Neptune, are unlike anything in our solar system. This lack of equivalent nearby planets means that these sub-Neptunes are poorly understood, and the nature of their atmospheres is a matter of active debate among astronomers. We're not too sure about what's going on here. The suggestion that the sub-Neptune K2-18b could be a Hycean exoplanet is intriguing, as some astronomers believe that these worlds are promising environments to search for evidence for life on exoplanets. Quote, our findings underscore the importance of considering diverse habitable environments in the search for life elsewhere, explained Niku Madhusudan, an astronomer at the University of Cambridge and lead author of the paper announcing these results. Quote, traditionally, the search for life on exoplanets has focused primarily on smaller rocky planets, but the larger Hycean worlds are significantly more conducive to atmospheric observations. The abundance of methane and carbon dioxide and shortage of ammonia support the hypothesis that there may be a water ocean underneath a hydrogen-rich atmosphere. So that would be cool. These initial Webb observations also provided a possible detection of a molecule called dimethyl sulfide on Earth. This is only produced by life. Let's mink 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 mink. Let's do that again. Let's do that again. Oh, all right. Because I don't. Let's whoop, boop, 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 boop. Let's redo that one. The abundance of methane and carbon dioxide and shortage of ammonia support the hypothesis that there may be a water ocean underneath a hydrogen-rich atmosphere in K2-18b. These initial Webb observations also provided a possible detection of a molecule called dimethyl sulfide. Now, what the hell is dimethyl sulfide? Well, glad you asked. On Earth, this is only produced by life. The bulk of the dimethyl sulfide in Earth's atmosphere is emitted from phytoplankton in marine environments. Let's full stop. Digest that for a second. This is good. This is good. This is promising. 120 light years away in the habitable zone, and there is evidence of a molecule that can only, to our knowledge, only be created by life, mostly by phytoplankton. So we're not talking big giant blue whales where you have millions and billions and trillions of individual cells that make it up. No, we're talking about phytoplankton, very small creatures that are, when compared to a human, not that complicated in their genetic or cell structure. We're not saying that there's these giant sea monsters on this planet. We're saying that there's evidence that there might be some. There might be some. Oh, wow. Wow. And you can see right here the amount of light blocked. You can see the different spectra of K2-18b obtained with Webb's N near-infrared imager and slitless spectrograph and near-infrared spectrograph display an abundance of methane and carbon dioxide in the exoplanet's atmosphere, as well as a possible, once again, this is possible, detection of a molecule called dimethyl sulfide. So, I mean, I cannot stress this enough. This is a major discovery. It is 2023. And this, up to this point, this is one of the best cases that we have of finding real solid evidence of life. Now, it is possible that there is this molecule in the atmosphere. It's a possibility. So let's keep that in mind. While K2-18b lies in the habitable zone, it is now known to harbor carbon-barren molecules. This does not necessarily mean that the planet can support life. The planet's larger size, with a radius 2.6 times the radius of Earth, means that the planet's interior likely contains a large mantle of high-pressure ice, like Neptune, but with a thinner hydrogen-rich atmosphere and an ocean surface. Haitian worlds are predicted to have oceans of water. However, it is also possible that the ocean is too hot to be habitable or liquid. Interesting to know when we're talking about phytoplankton as well. Characterizing the atmospheres of exoplanets like K2-18b, meaning identifying their gases and physical conditions, is a very active area in astronomy. However, these planets are outshone literally by the glare of their much larger parent stars, which makes exploring exoplanet atmospheres particularly challenging. They're just looking at the light that is going through the atmosphere of this planet, which is 120 light years away. Pretty crazy stuff. This result was only possible because of the extended wavelength range and unprecedented sensitivity of Webb, which enabled robust detection of spectral features with just 2 transits, said the researcher. For comparison, 1 transit observation with Webb provided comparable precision to 8 observatories with Hubble conducted over a few years and in a relatively narrow wavelength range. These results are the product of just 2 observations, with many more on the way. Hopefully, we get confirmation. Explained team member Savas Constantino of the University of Cambridge. This means our work here is but an early demonstration of what Webb can observe in habitable zone exoplanets. The team now intends to conduct follow-up research with the telescope's mid-infrared instrument spectrograph to hope they will further validate their findings and provide new insights into the environmental conditions of said planet. Folks, this might be it. We have to do more testing. We have to look more into it. But as we're looking right now, we're looking good. We're looking real good. And now let's talk a little bit more. This is sciencealert.com talking about it. In 2019, it was the first habitable zone rocky world in whose atmosphere's water was detected. So this is something that we have been looking at for a period of time. The habitable zone is the distance from its host star at which liquid water can persist on the surface, not so far as freeze into ice, nor so far that it steams away. Although this is a little bit bigger, there is water on this planet and that oh so lovely dimethyl sulfide. Using JWST's near infrared and near infrared, basically using the JWST, I forget the abbreviations. They watched K2-18b as it orbited between us and its host star twice. Then they studied the difference in the star's light, the result of having traveled through and being changed by the composition of the exoplanet's atmosphere. When they teased apart these changes, the researchers found evidence of carbon molecules, carbon dioxide, and methane. The spectrum of light also revealed hints, but only hints of dimethyl sulfide. So we need to do more findings at this thing. We should be pointing the JWST at this thing 24/7. I mean, the pictures of the galaxies are great. They look beautiful. They're much better looking than previous telescopes that we've had, but if I were running this thing, I'd be looking for life. I want to find life elsewhere out in the universe because I think it is so important. It is one of the most important things in the entire universe to know whether or not we are alone on this planet, whether there is something that we have to look forward to say we're not alone, we have others out there, and we can come together as a community and hopefully make our universe a little bit better. And also, if this life on this other planet is in a very early stage, maybe we can send something from our planet that will maybe get there in hundreds, if not thousands of years, but still get to this planet and hopefully help them on their journey to becoming an intelligent civilization. I hope that we would do that for this planet. Now, let's talk about a Hycean planet, mentioned multiple times as what this particular planet is. So this is another Science Alert article. This is kind of talking about what a Hycean planet is in and of itself. When we search for life out there in the galaxy, we base our efforts on what we know. So far, we only know that one planet has yielded life, obviously ours. That doesn't mean life doesn't exist on planets less like Earth, though. Now, a team of astronomers has identified a class of planets that may prove fruitful exoplanets clad in a global ocean with atmospheres rich in hydrogen could host life as we know it. Keyword there, as we know it. Such exoplanets are more numerous in planetary surveys than rocky ones, which means they could be fertile territory in the search for alien life. The researchers have dubbed them Hycean worlds. Quote, some of the conditions in the oceans of these worlds could be similar to habitable conditions in Earth's ocean. Similar temperatures and pressures, presence of liquid water, and energy from the star. Astronomer, the same person from Cambridge University Institute of Astronomy told Science Alert. Quote, there are many open questions, but this is only a first guess at this stage. The assumption is that if microbial aquatic life can form into these oceans in the same manner as they did on Earth, then some of the biosignatures may also be common. To date, nearly 4,500 exoplanets have been identified and confirmed out there in the wider Milky Way galaxy. Data from the Kepler Planet Hunting Space Telescope suggested the most common type of exoplanet is one that we don't even have in the solar system, mini Neptunes, which basically means from 1.6 up to 4 times the radius of Earth. So big boys. These are obviously smaller than our ice giant Neptune, but above the threshold between rocky planets and gaseous ones. This size and composition results in a thick atmosphere rich in hydrogen, like Neptune, and possibly a liquid ocean beneath it. Previous research suggested that the pressure on these worlds would be too high to support life as we know it. But last year, this researcher and colleagues published a paper on mini Neptune K2-18b, as we have talked about. Hycean worlds, the researcher and his team found, can be up to 2.6 times the size of Earth and up to 10 times Earth's mass. They also have a much larger range of distances from their host stars at which life could survive, what we call the habitable zone. Hycean exoplanets can be so close to their star that atmospheric temperatures can reach nearly 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit, or at distances at which a rocky planet would be too icy. The greenhouse warming due to molecular hydrogen is such that the planet can be very far from the star and still have warm, habitable conditions on the surface. For an Earth-like atmosphere, on the other hand, the main greenhouse gases like H2O and CO2 freeze out at shorter distances, making the surface frozen and not habitable. Because of this wide habitable zone, there's large variety even within the category of Hycean planets. Worlds so close to their stars as to be tidally locked with one side always facing the star, like our moon, would be classed as dark Hycean exoplanets, where life could only survive on the night side away from the heat and radiation. Cold Hycean worlds would be those at higher distances, where they would receive relatively little light, warmth, and radiation. The definition of these parameters means that future work can look at the atmospheres of such worlds to try and identify biosignatures, compounds in the atmosphere that could be signs of life. These include ozone, oxygen, and methane. But on Hycean worlds, which don't have as much atmospheric oxygen, other compounds such as methyl chloride and dimethyl sulfide could signal the presence of life. Essentially, we have been looking for these various molecular signatures. We have been focusing on planets similar to Earth, which is a reasonable place to start. But we think Hycean planets offer a better chance of finding several trace biosignatures. In their paper, the team laid out a few biomarkers that we might expect to see on Hycean worlds. These can be detected when an exoplanet passes between us and its stars, as we discussed before. Because mini Neptunes have such thick atmosphere, this should be easier to accomplish than with the thinner atmosphere of rocky planets. The James Webb Space Telescope will be able to perform this task very well, but several other instruments that are currently operating would be able to perform scouting observations to establish, for example, the presence of water in a mini Neptune atmosphere. Meanwhile, while waiting for telescope time, there's more theoretical work that needs to be undertaken, but it looks promising. And then finally, a potential illustration of what this planet might look like. And then you see the small little dwarf star that it is orbiting around. What is the likelihood of this? what are the chances that this is actually a promising planet where even if there isn't humans as we know it walking around on the surface of this planet, maybe there is very small, even single-celled organisms. I think we're getting close to the discovery. And as I've gotten older and I realize the mortality of living, I've thought about it more and more each with every passing year. Just life is something that is not common. It's not something that is widely available throughout the universe. It is a privilege. It's something that not a lot of people one have access to, but also one that people get to experience because although I'm here and you're here watching this video right now, there are literally infinite numbers of people who are not able to because there is currently only one Earth that we know of. Now, with the new evidence and new data that comes out in the future, hopefully we can prove that there are other planets out there which support life. But as it looks right now, we might be alone. Now, with the James Webb Space Telescope, we may find evidence of life. We're not going to find civilizations. That would be very complicated and very hard to do so. But I hope that we're able to find clear signals of life on a planet such as K2-18b. And one of the things I'm going to do today is I'm going to find where this planet is in the night sky and take a couple of minutes tonight. And I do have a telescope, but I might just sit out and kind of look up into the stars tonight and wonder, am I looking back into an expanse of nothingness where I'm the only eyes looking outwards? Or am I looking into a universe with potentially millions, if not billions, of other civilizations looking right back at me? I certainly hope we're not alone. I certainly hope that there are peaceful and loving civilizations that are out there that want truly what I would call the best intentions for our universe. They want to see the expansion and broadening of just doing fun stuff, of being nice to your neighbors, being supportive of those people who may not have given you a good shot in the past. All these things that on a day-to-day basis you may not think about. But whether you think about it or not, these things still happen on a day-to-day basis where you have a small inconvenience. And because, yeah, you're not thinking about, maybe we're the only ones here. And we should be infinitely grateful that we're here right now. And we should use our time to help make the lives of other people better, to help ease the pain and suffering that happens on this planet. Because as it looks right now, there may not be another civilization out there. And maybe it's us who has to set the example of what it means to be a positive civilization. Maybe we're the ones to set things in motion for our universe. Maybe we're the ones who can finally go to Mars and start a colony on Mars. And maybe this time when we go to Mars, we don't treat it like we have treated Earth in the past, where we pollute our oceans, where we start wars over frivolous reasons, where we make up lies to go into wars and we invade countries and we kill innocent people. I hope that that's not a reality on a different planet. And I hope that that's something that is only here on Earth. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the reality. I think there are other civilizations out there. And unfortunately, I think there are other civilizations that are just as bloodthirsty as us humans are. But with that being said, I certainly hope that much of the conversation that we've had today can change your outlook. And you can be excited that there is this possibility of life elsewhere. And yeah, you still have to pay your bills. You still have to go to work. You still have to clock in. You still have kids. You still have chores that you have to do. You have a mortgage to pay off. You have rent to pay. You have student loans that you have to pay. You have a mom who's in the hospital. You have a dad's doing this. You have a brother who's doing this. You have a sister doing this. You have a cousin doing this. All the different factors of life which may affect you negatively. A car crash, a bill that you got all out of a sudden that you can't pay. You can't pay your car on time because you have to buy groceries and the price of groceries has gone up in your area. These are things that real, not just Americans, but people on this planet deal with. And I can't sit here and say that finding life out in the universe is going to help somebody else out, but I hope it can make you appreciate just even a little bit the luck that we have here on Earth, and that maybe it's not worth it to curse out that guy who just cut you off in traffic. It's not worth it to be disrespectful to your parents. It's not worth it to get into a fight with your wife over something silly, like she didn't do the dishes, or she didn't make your food the correct way. She burned your toast or something like that. These little things that irritate you in the moment. You're like, I just came home from working a full day and now I have this thing or that thing that I have to worry about. It is frustrating. But that does not mean that you should disrespect your spouse, disrespect your friends, have these anger spouts with these people that you truly love and care about. Sometimes there are things that are bigger than you. And hopefully, with the hopefully soon discovery of life elsewhere in our universe, hopefully that can open some people's eyes. And I hope that that can help inspire some people to not lead with so much anger and so much angst and so much pain in their lives. It can help people relate with each other, even if they disagree about politics, even if you voted for Biden or you voted for Trump, or you think both of them are war criminals who should be put in prison, or if you think both of them are the greatest presidents that we've ever had. Or you live in a completely different country where conversations like this never come up. There are no conversations about, do you think we're alone in the universe? Because you're working so much, because you have to provide for your family. And unfortunately, it's a sad reality of a planet that not everything or everyone is equal. And now I wish it was different. I wish these massive corporations would provide more for their workers. Not to say that they don't provide anything for their workers, but to help people out. People get taken advantage of all the time. In governments that take advantage of their people, or politicians that take advantage of their people to enrich themselves. I've talked about a couple of times on this podcast about stock trades from politicians in our own United States federal government. And now currently there's another impeachment inquiry about our current president of the United States. And now I'm not an expert on the topic. Yeah, I've talked about some of the stuff that the House GOP has said about Hunter Biden and his business dealings overseas and those different stories. And if you want to see kind of what my take was at the time, maybe now looking back on it, I would have maybe a different opinion on it. But go look back and see what I talked about then. There are so many things to focus on in this planet, and there are so many different ways to be upset and be hurt and be disappointed with our government, with our people, with our species as a total. But I hope that talking about these stories can help bring a sense of hope to people that we are not alone, that there is life elsewhere out in the world, and that we can have an impact on it, that we can spread the best parts of our society out into the universe. Now, it's not for me to decide what are the best parts of our society, but there's a big list of many of those things. Welcome back in to your regularly scheduled program. I had to take a break. We got Carmela up and Adam going to be tossing her ball back and forth with her. This is an actual tennis ball, so it bounces pretty nice for her. Yikes. Sliding all over the place. Our next story, the NFL. A lot of stuff happened in the first week of the NFL. Major takeaways. Obviously, number one thing is the Aaron Rodgers injuries. Achilles injury. At the time, I thought he had just broken his ankle, which is obviously a much less severe injury than actually the torn Achilles. But he's most likely going to be out for the majority of the season. There is a chance that he does come back. But with that being said, I mean, we can look into some of these stories. I mean, absolutely devastating. I think he played 4 snaps before his injury, and it was just, I mean, the Jets were able to win the game. It was a fantastic overtime win by the Jets. A punt return kickoff for a touchdown. Josh Allen was absolutely atrocious for the majority of the game. I don't know whether it was particularly the Jets defense was really that good or if he was just playing that bad, but according to Kurt Warner during the radio broadcast of the game, he was just making bad reads. So I'm going to trust Kurt Warner's eyes, not my own, and say that I think that I don't know what was going on. He was just making these weird decisions where he would try and throw it into the end zone with 2 guys on Stephon Diggs. Maybe those work out later in the season, but on Monday night, that was not the case. But anyways, they are saying it is a season-ending injury. But let's see what Robert Saleh has to say. Does this mean retirement? Because he's going to be 40, or he is 40 currently. But we'll see. I haven't gone down that road, I mean, I'd be shocked if this is the way he's going to go out, Saleh said Wednesday. But at the same time, for him, he's working through a whole lot of headspace thing that he needs to deal with, and that will be the last thing I talk to him about. Rodgers signed a revised contract in New York this offseason that runs through the 2025 season and suggested multiple times he planned on playing for the Jets for more than 1 year. It's possible, however, that the Achilles injury could change those decisions. Regardless of how the future unfolds, Saleh hopes Rodgers will remain around the club to help mentor Zach Wilson and others. Of course. I think it's very important. I think it's important for him, mental health and healing. I think that's very important. But his presence, his words, like I said, he's just as much a football coach as he is a player. And just having his presence, his thoughts, his words, and his leadership, I think anyone would want that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the pressure now is going to be on Zach Wilson now. And unfortunately, as we've seen throughout his career, I'm not sure if he can handle the pressure. I wish him nothing but the best. I obviously hope he doesn't get injured or he plays poorly or anything like that. But I just feel as though with Rodgers out most likely the rest of the season, Zach Wilson taking over the team, I feel as though I have to revise my pick. I mean, I said last week I don't think they're going to be that great, but now I'm thinking they might even be worse. I don't think they can get to 10 wins. I think they could get to 9 wins though. I still think they could be a winning team because that defense is elite defense. And also their running game is not bad as well. But we'll kind of look out to see some other things. Chris Jones, obviously, back on the team. He did sign his deal, which is good for himself. I am really, really excited to see him back on the thing. All right, highlight players of the week. Let's see. Obviously, the Giants game was not the best. Good to see former Bears running back Tariq Cohen planning to sign with the Panthers practice squad. It's really good for him because he's been injured for a very, very long time. But kind of getting more into the effects of the Aaron Rodgers injuries. It will impact not just this season, but the 2024 draft order. The Green Bay Packers, who traded Rodgers to the Jets in April, will receive a second-round draft pick as part of the deal now that Rodgers is set to miss the final 16 games of the season. The stipulations of the trade require that Rodgers play 65% of the Jets' offensive snaps this season for Green Bay to receive a 2024 first-round pick. Also, in the Rodgers trade, the Packers and Jets swapped first-round picks in the 2023 NFL Draft, with Green Bay also sending a 2023 fifth-rounder in the deal and Jets sending back second and sixth-rounders in 2023. Rodgers suffered the ruptured Achilles on the Jets' fourth play from scrimmage Monday night against the Bills. Just an awful thing. Now, let's do a little recap of the weekend's games. The best performance and probably the most fun game to watch. Surprisingly, I was very surprised. Won by the Rams. I thought the Rams really, really put together a good performance, and the Seahawks just kind of struggled very badly. I was like, huh? What's going on here? If I were to choose a best game of the week, I probably would say the Dolphins versus the Chargers. I mean, Tyreek Hill, 215 receiving yards. He's looking like he may or may not. I'm not going to say he's the best wide receiver. I'll reserve that for Justin Jefferson. But he might have the best wide receiver season. Similar to what Justin Jefferson did last year. I mean, Justin Jefferson very close to winning MVP a la Michael Thomas a couple years ago. But some standout performances, particularly from teams. Jags, I thought that they played fairly well offensively. Not a lot of line issues like you would have thought. I mean, let's see. Let's see if we got any. Yeah, sacks. Yeah. They got sacked only twice, with Trevor Lawrence throwing 32 times. He did have one fumble, which is not ideal, but he's still 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 241 yards. You'll take that from Trevor Lawrence. And then Anthony Richardson, I mean, we expected him to be great on his feet, and he was. But it just comes down to the defense of the Colts. I mean, the secondary didn't look super great, right? Like in pass coverage, and it's not as though the Jags have elite weapons. They do have Calvin Ridley, obviously, that they brought over, who's finally playing again, but you kind of can see where this team's strength is, and it's diverse group of receivers. Evan Ingram got there, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 49 yards. You'll take that from your tight end. I thought that they played fairly good, and I think the Jags could be good. There was many different plays by Trevor Lawrence where he threw the ball into a tight window. It was absolutely magical. Another game, obviously here in Pittsburgh. The 49ers absolutely manhandled the Steelers. I expected the 49ers to win, but I did not expect them to win like that. That was an absolute beatdown. And that was both offensively and defensively. These teams were completely mismatched. And now you have injuries on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cam Cam Hayward groin injury. He's going to be out and miss some time. So expect that defense to be even worse at stopping the run. Christian McCaffrey, you can see right here, 152 yards rushing. Not ideal. Not ideal. Other games, the Chiefs versus the Lions. I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, it was the first game of the season. Mahomes didn't play particularly well. I thought he looked a kind of rusty. His wide receivers weren't helping him at all. I mean, you see that pick six that he threw was just absolutely devastating. Devastating. But as we go further into the season, I'm not too worried about this team, particularly because they're getting Chris Jones back. They're gonna get a healthy Travis Kelce. And I think the rest of the season they're gonna be a-okay. They're gonna be fine. They're gonna be cooking. I don't expect for the Lions to, if they were to replay the Chiefs, say in week 15, 16, 17, I wouldn't expect them to be able to win that game, right? And you look at time in possession. One thing was just mostly the costly turnovers for the Chiefs. There were so many videos of those receivers dropping passes that seemed to be easy catches, and frankly, I thought that it was just rust, and maybe they are riding high after winning multiple World Series, but we'll see. So let's look at our season leaders. Passer rating, Jordan Love. Interesting little look right there. You would expect that. I thought he played a pretty great performance. Yeah, he was helped out by Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones, we will look to see if he is going to be healthy for the remainder of his game. So that will have fantasy implications, and maybe that will put more focus on Jordan Love to try and have a better overall performance. But obviously, the big quarterback after the first week, I would say, is probably Tua. Another good one would be Trevor Lawrence, even though the numbers don't back it up. I thought he was very, very well poised in the pocket, and I thought he performed great. And like I said earlier, he does have some weapons around him. So I think that the Jags, despite what I said in the preseason, I think they could be a real factor in their own division, which would have implications for the my pick for the Titans going. I mean, the Titans just looked awful. Unfortunately, I was probably wrong about that. But another one that I thought was interesting was Justin Fields. In terms of quarterback as a runner, he's probably number one in the league. I'll put him up against anybody at this point. He's probably the best outside of the pocket rusher, particularly right now. I don't think he's developed his pass game to where it can be a threat outside of the pocket. He made a couple of interesting plays. I mean, at inopportune times, that fumble towards the end of the game when they were within a couple of scores, they were in striking distance from the team. It was just inopportune timing, and he's just got to hold on to the football. Simple as that. Desmond Ridder also looks to be the guy in Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta's formula is throw the ball 15, 20 times and run the rest of the time. Let's control the clock and let's get into it. All right. And then game-winning drives. Yep. Comebacks. Let's go to the rushers. I thought the probably the best was maybe Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's so dynamic. He can catch the ball, he can run you over, he can stiff arm you. He can be a power back, but he can also be a speed back and extremely elusive. He may or may not be still the best running back in the NFL. It's really hard to say. Um, I tend to lean more towards somebody such as a Nick Chubb, just because I typically prefer, or I have a bias towards those power running backs where they're very hard to tackle. But with that being said, it's hard to make a case against Christian McCaffrey at this point throughout the season. Obviously, one game, but we'll say for week one he's the running back MVP, and then wide receiver, don't even have to say anybody else. It's Tyreek Hill. That one's very, very easy to point out. And then defensively, I mean, we're probably gonna have to say Jordan Whitehead. I mean, he was phenomenal. Another one would possibly be if you look at it, TJ Watt had a amazing game for week one. So he could potentially be up there. Him, Josh Allen as well. Were very, very good, but those are probably the two best there. And then Marshawn Lattimore. Oh, the Saints. I didn't talk about the Saints. Yeah, the Saints were one of those teams where I was on the lookout for them. I was looking around and I was thinking maybe they could be a really good offensive unit. Maybe they could be one of those teams that sneak into the playoffs towards the end of the season. And they showed some real promise. I thought as though that quarterback play in this game was obviously not amazing, with Ryan Tannehill throwing 3 interceptions and less than 200 yards on 34 passes, which is very not good. And meanwhile, Derek Carr, 305 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but 4 sacks as well. Not good there. So they need to help keep that pressure on that offensive line. But I think that if we can get some form of consistency with the defense, I mean, a defense that's going to be able to get you 3 interceptions a game is going to be real good. But you got to turn those turnovers into points, unfortunately. But I am feeling confident about the Saints. I am feeling like they could potentially be a unit for the remainder of the year that could surprise some people. So keep an eye on them. All right. Let's do some picks. Let's go into week 2. Let's see what we got. Let's check the schedule. Week 2 preview. All right. Starting with Vikings, Eagles. I believe this is an Eagles home game. That is... Yes, Eagles are at home for this game. Eagles are going to be favored by 7. Interesting. I thought Kirk Cousins was good in their first game. They lost Dalvin Cook, so obviously that run game is not going to be as dynamic as it once was. So they may be kind of more easy to predict. And then on the other side, Jalen Hurts gave up a pretty bad turnover in the game against the Patriots, almost brought them back into the game. Definitely something to look out on that side is just that ball security. If you are going to run it, you better make sure that you hold on to the ball. But as it stands right now, some injuries that are questionable for the Vikings, and there will be maybe some people out for the Eagles, which is not good as well. But in terms of a flat out win, I think the Eagles go up 2-0. I do think it's a close game, though. I don't know about the Eagles -7. I think if we're gonna go with the odds, I would take the Vikings here. I would take them at +7. But to overall win the game, I think it will be an Eagles, but I think it'll still be close. Packers, Falcons. Give me the Falcons here. I know, obviously, their offensive game is not ideal, but they were able to look at this point differential. A 14-point differential. Obviously, with Green Bay, you see something else, but who did Green Bay play, right? That's also part of the factor. Atlanta, I feel like they're just going to be able to control the clock very, very well. I think they're probably going to be in the top 3 or 4 in terms of rushing yards per game for a team, and I think that that's their path to victory. I think Desmond Ridder is the real deal. I think as long as they keep him to under 25 passes a game, he could be very, very good. A lot of screens, a lot of short passes for him, get him really, really comfortable in this offense. Some things to look out. There are some potentials for the Packers. Keep an eye out on the status of Aaron Jones. If he's not ready to go, it will be A.J. Dillon as the running back, who's not a bad second option. New London, Connecticut resident. Well, not currently, but in the past. Hoping to see some form of real good performance by Jordan Love before I start buying in. I mean, 3 touchdowns is amazing. But I want to see a couple more weeks of Jordan Love. Obviously, having multiple years to sit on the bench behind Aaron Rodgers has definitely helped him out a lot in his development. But we will see in the game on Sunday. I am going to pick the Falcons in this game. I just think that the Packers, they will just get they won't be able to keep the time on the ball. And I think that although their defense is pretty stacked, I feel as though that the Falcons are just going to be able to run all over them. So I'm going to take the Falcons +2 to outright win the game. So there's a little bit of an upset. All right, Raiders at Bills. After watching the previous game, Bills are favored by 10, which is pretty crazy. Over under 47. I do worry about Josh Allen. He throws the ball so much, so he has the potential to have these monster games, but he also has the potential to have major lapses in judgment, which I mentioned earlier. However, on the other side, Jimmy Garoppolo, I thought he was all right. I didn't hate what I saw, but I feel as though he could have a better performance in the upcoming week. But we will wait and see kind of on him to see where he's at in the following week. Did have a injury to their wide receiver, so be on the lookout for that. And I would also like to point out that Josh Jacobs not as good as I would have expected. In terms of the run game, I would have expected him to have at least 75 yards. I mean, 19 rushes for Jacobs in less than 50 yards is not something that you want to see. So looking for a little bit of improvement on that end, but I am going to take the Bills. -10 is a lot of points, but I would lean on the side of I think the Bills could do that. I don't really think that the first game of the Raiders is indicative of where they're going to be for the remainder of the season. Although it was a close win, yes. I felt like they played better than what you would expect for them the remainder of the season, and I think the complete opposite for the Bills. They played horrible on Monday night, and I think they'll play better the remainder of the season. I mean, if you get embarrassed like that, you're going to keep practicing. You're going to work your ass off so that does not happen again. So I'm going to take the Bills here. I feel comfortable with -10. Baltimore, Cincinnati. I'm going to take Baltimore here. And this is partly due to the Bengals really struggling in that first game. I mean, Joe Burrow 14 to 31, 82 yards. Um just an awful performance. And I feel like Lamar Jackson can have another season in which he gets us a share of the MVP vote. I would not hate to see that for him. But we will be looking to see what the running game outside of Lamar Jackson is, what kind of is always a worry for me. But you are looking at Marlon Humphrey being out. You do have a couple of good players. Mark Andrews, another player to look at as well in terms of um, being ready for the game. These are all September 8th, so make sure that you stay up to date on all of these injuries. But yeah, I'm going to take the Ravens here. I think the Ravens are going to be able to pull out a close win in this game. I don't think it'll be a convincing win. I think it will be one of those that come down to the final drive or two in the game. I think it'll be close. Maybe 20-23 a game, something like that. Moving on, Giants versus Cardinals. I will take the Giants here. I think this will be an easy win for them. After getting kind of embarrassed the previous week, I think the Giants are looking to make a statement. And unfortunately, the Cardinals are going to be the team that they make that statement against. I would not be surprised if Daniel Jones throws for 300 yards, rushes for 25, 30, 40 yards on the ground, and makes a couple of nice plays, a couple of highlight plays. But it is still to be seen. I just feel bad for Arizona. I mean, in their first game, it did not look pretty defensively. I worry about them for the remainder of the season. Jets at the Dallas Cowboys. All right, now knowing that the updated lineup of the Jets is so, I'm gonna pick the Cowboys here. I thought the Cowboys defense was phenomenal in their first game. They were absolutely in terms of pass rushing, one of the best teams in the league, and frankly, one of the best defensive performances I've seen in quite some time. Now, the main thing to worry about in this game is offensively for the Jets. Is Zach Wilson going to be able to consistently move the ball down the field? And if he gets pressure, is he going to be able to make plays on the run? Or is he going to try and force the ball into tight windows and get himself into trouble via turnovers? But I'll take the Cowboys -10. All right, Washington versus Denver. I thought Washington didn't perform terrible. I thought they were all right. They did win a close game against the Cardinals, but still I feel as though that they could be something this year. Sam Howell doesn't look like he's the worst quarterback in that division, which is a good thing. But I will take the Broncos in this game right here. Not super impressed with anything that I saw from Russell Wilson, but we will continue to see how he does overall for the remainder of the season, and we will see hopefully some former Russ magic. Even though 4 points is, in my opinion, a lot in this game for the Broncos, I still think that the Broncos can cover. Should be interesting to see what that defensive line is able to do against Russell Wilson. See if he's still able to move around like he has in previous years. Seattle versus Detroit. I think Detroit wins this game and they start the year off 2-0. Jared Goff, long term, I don't think he's a good option for this team. Obviously, he's getting up there in age. I mean, in terms of NFL quarterback, but I will be interested to see if Geno Smith can bounce back in this game. Look to see if maybe DK Metcalf can potentially get more targets in this game, but the running game for the Seahawks, not worried about. It's just the passing game. I mean, obviously Geno Smith has not been the greatest, um, the greatest quarterback in recent years. Even though last year he had a fantastic year, I just worry about week to week the consistency with him, and this Lions defense, particularly their pass rush, is second to none. So in this game, Lions 6, I think they could do that. I think they could potentially win by a touchdown in this game. Colts versus Texans. Um, Colts favored by 1. I would actually take the Texans here. I think the Texans could win this game. I really was surprised by CJ Stroud. I thought he had a lot of ups and downs. You could tell that he was maybe not operating at his best in that first game, but be that as it may, I thought that he still played pretty well, even though the team around him is not not the most talented, but I still think that he has a bright future. And now, unless there's if Anthony Richardson is able to score a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown, I think that's going to be hard for the Texans to beat. I think this is going to be a very low scoring game. I would be probably taking the under in this game. Unless there is a special teams and defensive touchdown in this game, I really do not see a big scoring output from this game. Like I said, I think it might be like a 17-14 game, unfortunately, but I do have the Texans taking this game, and I think they will be victorious. Kansas City, Jacksonville. Interesting game. Chiefs favored by 3. Um, Obviously another game where Patrick Mahomes has to kind of prove to the league that he is who he say he is. Which I ultimately think he will be able to do. So I'm not too worried about this matchup. The Jags, I will be looking to see how Trevor Lawrence is able to do, what Chris Jones can do in this game, and also be watching out to see how Travis Kelce is probably he's most likely going to play in the game, but I'll keep my eyes open to see kind of how he does. And then defensively for the Chiefs, I just need a couple more turnovers. I need something from that secondary. Just give me something. Now, Miami to New England, I think this is going to be a bloodbath for the Dolphins. The Patriots kept it real close with the Eagles. Kept it real close. That defense is no joke. Mac Jones, 316 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not bad either. But however, I do not think he's going to be able to do that against the Dolphins. They have some legit players on that defense. Their defensive line is amazing, and they have some real quality linebackers, but particularly corners. Their corners are second to none. Give me the Dolphins at -2. I think this is an easy win for them. Chargers at Titans. I'm going to take the Chargers. Little surprised at how they performed in their first game. I thought Justin Herbert would have a good season this year, and I think maybe this is the first game where he starts hitting his stride. I hope for his sake that he's able to really start to work well for the Chargers' sake. Defensively, a little worried about the Charger. I mean, giving up 36 in the game. It was a shootout type of game, but hoping for a little bit in terms of what they can do on defense. They are +2 in the takeaway differential, which is always good as a team compared to the Titans at -1. So yeah, I think that the Titans, unfortunately, with my preseason pick, after watching them for one game, I think I'm wrong. I definitely think I was wrong in my prediction for the Titans. I mean, Derrick Henry, yeah, good. DeAndre Hopkins, pretty average, unfortunately. All right, 49ers at Rams. Oh, -8 for the 49ers. Okay. Maybe. Maybe. Well, maybe. That's a maybe. Because and I'm thinking because of travel that maybe the 49ers really don't perform too well, but I think Brock Purdy is the real deal. I don't see him going anywhere in that team's future. And I just don't think that Matthew Stafford's going to throw for 330 yards in his next game. I just don't see that happening. But definitely some worries potentially for the Rams for the remainder of the season because their schedule gets real tough. Real tough. Chicago at the Bucks. Bucks are -3. Baker Mayfield, I thought he was all right. I didn't think he was bad at all. Their offense was kind of clicking a little bit. Their defense obviously has been their strong point for multitude of years. Even when they had Tom Brady, their best unit was their defense. They're first with +3 takeaways. Always good to have that. I don't feel as though Baker Mayfield's the type of quarterback to turn the ball over a lot. He made smart passes. 21 to 34 is not ideal, but still, if Baker Mayfield can kind of be a little bit more efficient, maybe throw 25 to 29 times, maybe they'll be in better shape. And Justin Fields just got to reduce turnovers. Just got to play smart. I'm fine with the running. I'm fine with the going outside of the pocket. If there's anybody in the league who I trust, it's Justin Fields to be able to make those kind of plays. That's including Patrick Mahomes. I think outside of the pocket and as a runner, there is nobody better in the league than Justin Fields. And that includes Lamar Jackson because Justin Fields is a monster in terms of a size of a player. I mean, he's very hard to tackle, very hard to tackle. So in this game, I will take the Buccaneers. However, -3, I'll take that as well. I just think defensively they'll be able to shut down the Bears. And but I think for the remainder of the season, the Bears will be all right. I don't think that they'll be a below 500 team by the end of the season. Saints, Panthers, give me the Saints here. -3. I like that. Bryce Young, pretty okay in his first start. He kind of sucks for the team. They're just not a great roster. But I have a lot of faith in the Saints, in Derek Carr. I mean, their running game is going to be a pretty strong group for them. So going to take Saints -3 right here, outright win for the Saints. And then Monday night, Browns Steelers. Give me the Browns -2. Deshaun Watson, I think he throws for 250 yards here, maybe a touchdown. And then Kenny Pickett, I don't know. He's made some plays where they're very questionable, a la multiple other players who I've mentioned in the past. It's just he's just got to be smarter with the ball. And you can look at both of these teams. -2 takeaway differential for the Browns, -1 takeaways for the Steelers. So this may be a low scoring game. They have the over under at 40. I might take the under on that one. This could potentially be a pretty rough game. With that being said, that is the conclusion to today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate you stopping in. Hopefully you can appreciate some of the things that I talked about. I'm so excited about the one football's back. I paid the extra amount of money this year so that I get Red Zone on the NFL Plus Premium or whatever it is. It's only $15 a month, which is like one of the few subscriptions that I'll pay for. But you get Red Zone, so I'll deal with that later. But also really looking forward to see kind of what comes out of the JWST, see kind of where their research goes with that particular exoplanet. I'll keep my eyes on it. You guys know that if I see anything that happens there, I'll come straight to you. This is the Zach Moore Podcast. Thank you for listening.